Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the series Golden Knowledge Career Development Workshop with Natasha Jones from HMC's Office of Career Services. Golden Knowledge is a new series dedicated to Gold alumni, graduates of the last decade, that focuses on life skills needed after graduation and beyond. My name is Vanessa Chu, Assistant Director in the Office of Alumni and Parent Relations. We thank you for attending today's event. This talk is being recorded and will be distributed next week. Please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat, and we will try to get through as many questions as possible. Now, I'm going to turn over to our speaker to kick it off. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Vanessa. And before I jump in, just wanted to give everyone a disclaimer. I've had a bit of a sore throat and I've had a couple coughing fits. It's not COVID, I got tested, but just in case I suddenly turn off my camera and microphone, I might just be coughing, but I will come right back. Okay, so I'm going to jump into my presentation. Okay. So thank you all again for being here. My name is Natasha Jones and my pronouns are she, her. And like Vanessa said, I am a career advisor in the Office of Career Services. And today I'll be going through a lot of our services and resources that we have to offer alumni like yourselves. So a little overview of what I'll be talking about. I will kind of generally explain OCS. Hopefully you're familiar, but I'll still be doing a general overview. Then talking a little bit about what career development is, and then going through in detail some of our online resources and showing you how to use them, so showing you some cool features. And then I'll be very, very briefly talking about a bunch of different career-related topics. All of these topics could be their own hour-long webinar, so it's going to be, again, very brief, kind of surface level. But towards the end, if you have any questions about any of these topics and want to talk more in depth, I'm very happy to do so. And then I'll be closing with some announcements about upcoming events that we have in OCS, and then leaving time for questions also. Okay, so OCS, or the Office of Career Services, our mission is to prepare and empower every student and alum to realize their full potential and help them feel prepared to cultivate a lifetime of opportunity and to create a positive impact on society. So we try to accomplish this mission in a variety of ways. One is through advising appointments, which you still have access to. There's no cutoff for our advising services. So if you ever wanted to meet with myself or another advisor to talk about a resume or cover letter or prepare for interviews, we can help you out with all of that. And then you would schedule those appointments on Handshake, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. We also host educational workshops similar to this one, where we talk about any career development topic, as well as workshops and information sessions with employers. So we try to facilitate some direct connections with students, alumni, and employers, as well as career fairs. You're still always welcome to attend our career fairs, as well as a variety of online resources that we have, which I'll be going into more depth about soon. So firstly, I wanted to set the scene a little bit and talk about what career development as a topic is. Hopefully, you know, that's why we're doing this workshop. November is National Career Development Month. So I wanted to just kind of throw in a little definition here. The balance defines career development as a lifelong process of self-knowledge, exploration, and decision-making that shapes your career. So it is very broad, really any kind of moves or education that you make to benefit yourself and your career is career development. So career development might look like attending workshops like this one, maybe going to conferences within your industry or an industry that you might be interested in, upskilling, developing new or refreshing your skills, rekindling professional and academic relationships to strengthen your network, doing informational interviews with people that might be at companies or in roles that you're interested in, as well as starting new jobs or taking on new responsibilities at your job, being promoted, or meeting with a career advisor. All of this can count as career development. Okay, so the first resource that I wanted to show you and kind of talk about in depth is Handshake. Handshake is one of our main online resources, and it has a lot of different features, including a job board where you can see our events. You can learn more about employers and see other people that have worked for employers that you might be interested in. And you can also schedule appointments and view different resources that we have on Handshake. So I will pop out of my slides really quickly so I can show you Handshake. So Handshake, you log into with your @hmc.edu email. And then if you want to start searching for opportunities, you can go to jobs in the upper left corner. And then it functions very similarly to kind of any standard job board. You can search for specific titles. You can filter by location if you're looking for something full-time or part-time, or in person or remote. And then the positions automatically sort by relevance based on what's in your Handshake profile. So if you see things that don't really seem relevant to your interests, that might mean that your profile isn't super filled out, which is totally fine. Then you would just use whatever relevant search terms you're wanting to look for. You can also sort by application deadline, which can be really helpful, so that you make sure that you're seeing positions that you might be interested in and apply to those before they expire. And then if you're planning on spending a bit of time just sorting through opportunities on Handshake, if you click on the little ribbon icon next to any position, those will end up in your saved jobs so that you can return to a smaller list of positions you're interested in and don't have to worry about losing track of those positions. Otherwise, on Handshake, you can also look at events, like I mentioned, and any of the events that you see, whether or not they're hosted by MUD, you're usually able to attend if you can see them. So they might be hosted by companies themselves, or they might be events at the other 7 Cs. So you can always just check these out, see what might be coming up. We have next semester several industry nights coming up, which I will talk more about toward the end of my presentation. But yeah, just wanted to let you know, you can always check out these events. And then under the Employers tab, you can search for maybe, you're interested in Google, or you want to look into working at Google sometime. You can look up companies on Handshake. And then you can see reviews by other students or alumni, as well as if people have done interviews with them, they might share about their experience and might even share a question that they were asked in an interview. But going back to the overview, something else, excuse me, you might want to do is see if other Mudders have worked at that company in the past. So I know it says students, but these might also contain alumni. So you can go to see all. And then if you want to find just Mudders only, you can select that. You can actually also filter for if you only want to see other alumni, and just put in whatever filters you're looking for, and then you'll be able to see people that meet those criteria. And these might be great people to try to connect with and message and just ask about their experience. So that this is another thing that you can do on Handshake. And then last couple things that I want to show you on Handshake is under the Career Center in the upper right corner. You can schedule appointments, and then you'll schedule a new appointment. If it shows, okay. So you can select alumni, and then you'll be able to see all of the different appointment types that we offer. So again, we have resumes, cover letters. We can talk about job and, well, mostly job searching, talking about interview prep, which is just more talking about like strategies for preparing for interviews, versus behavioral interview practice and technical interview practice. These are more mock interview appointments where you'll make that appointment, and then we come with prepared questions to ask. We'll sit down together, most likely virtually, and then run through those questions as if it's a real interview, and then give you feedback on how you did afterward. Also, if you're interested in talking about grad school, or having us look over your application materials, we can definitely help out with that. As well as other online resources like LinkedIn. If you want us to look at your profile, we're happy to do that as well. So there's really a variety of appointments. And if there's a topic that you want to talk about that doesn't appear here, you can always reach out through email, and we're happy to, let you know if that's something that we can help you with. Okay, and then one more thing in the Career Center is resources. So here we have a pretty wide variety of different types of resources. They might be links to articles or previous presentation slides or recordings of presentations, or articles, different tips and tricks for different topics. So if you're looking for information around a certain career topic, it can be good. You can try to search for something here, like if you want to look for resources around resumes. We have several resources for resumes and different topics. So this is a good place to start looking for information and resources for different topics you might want to learn more about. Okay, and window. Okay, so that's Handshake. And then another online resource hub that we have is on the hmc.edu website. So with this, I'll pop over here. And sorry, you can also find this by just going to hmc.edu and then under student life and then career services, and that will bring you to this page. So some resources that you might be interested in, even though there is a separation of students and alumni, most of them are housed under students, but all of it still applies to everyone. So one of our main resources is our career guide. This is a resource that the OCS in the past put together. In its physical form, it looks kind of like a magazine, but this is just broken up digitally into its different topics. So some really useful sections that I refer to a lot is resumes. And this one is a pretty long packet. The first half is just giving kind of instructional information, tips, but something I find really helpful is about midway through the packet, we have several example resumes. So if you're ever wanting to compare your resume to other pretty standard ones, these can be good to look at and just use as a reference or inspiration maybe. And then another really common one is cover letters. I refer to this a lot. And this document, similarly, the first page just walks you through what type of content you should try to address in your different paragraphs. And this is not like you have to address all of these things or you have to address them in this order or anything. This is just a framework that can be helpful for writing a cover letter. And then also it's followed by a couple example cover letters as well. So there's that. We also have, if we go back to our students tab, oh, and this is also this job and internship guide is the same career guide we just looked at, but all together in one PDF. We also have a graduate school guide. So if you're ever considering graduate school and you want to just start out with some kind of foundational information of things you should be thinking about or planning for, this guide can be very helpful. So it gives general tips about where to apply, what you should be considering when you're looking into different programs, as well as this application process is kind of in mind for current students, but you can totally ignore the junior year, senior year stuff and just kind of consider whatever season it is and kind of planning ahead for a couple of years out for applying to grad school. This also goes through different tips for application forms, letters of recommendation. It has really helpful information about information that you should provide to people that you want to ask to write letters of recommendation for you, as well as detailing tips for what should be in a personal statement or a statement of purpose, and just other resources around financial aid and information around where other mutters have studied. So it can be helpful if you're starting to look into grad school things. And then another resource that we have that might be helpful is our job search toolbox. So here, what I often refer to is resources by industry. So when you're searching for different technical positions, I do always recommend Handshake is a great place to be looking. Definitely LinkedIn and other large job boards are great to look at as well. But if you wanted to look into some more like industry specific job boards, these are some great places to look into, and we've organized them by industry. So we have CS, engineering, a lot of environment focused job boards, math, general sciences. So these are some great places to look into, and just more places to add to your list of places that you might be searching for jobs. All right, and then one more thing that I wanted to show you on this website. So under alumni, we have that same career guide or job and internship search guide. And then something additional that we have here is Beyond HMC, Graduate School Fellowships and Gap Year Guide. And this has, it has a lot of the information that is also in the grad school guide, in addition to information around fellowships and fellowship programs, different like financial awards to help fund grad school or research. So these can be helpful to look into as well. Okay, now jumping back to the presentation. Another online resource that we have, I'm coming to the end of these almost, but another one is Mud Compass. And Mud Compass, you can kind of consider it like a smaller sort of niche LinkedIn, because it has a lot of the same features, like you can search for jobs and opportunities, as well as connect with the Mud community and network and, you know, join groups, look at resources. So I will pop over to Mud Compass really quick. Okay, so for Mud Compass, one great feature is the community. And this is where you will be searching for people that you might want to connect with or learn from. So when you, or if you haven't already set up your Mud Compass account, I highly recommend that you do so. And when you do, you'll be prompted to select different topics that you're willing to talk to others about. So I think it's under, yes, topics. You can find people that have said that they're open to others asking them anything, or specifically, maybe you want to find people that can talk about industry trends, or are willing to do practice interviews with you. So you can select whatever it is that you might be looking for or wanting to find people that have said they're willing to help with these things, and then apply that. And then you'll be able to see those people. And we can just do an example. If you want to look at someone and learn a little bit more about what they're doing, you can see some of their employment history, and just other information that they might have said about themselves. And then if you want to reach out to them, you'll click on message. And then Mud Compass is really great. It gives you these kind of pre-set message templates. If you're not really sure exactly what you want to say when you're reaching out to them, you can just use any of these and edit them, you know, as you see fit for your situation. And then also on Mud Compass, we have career paths. So this is information around different careers. Maybe you're in a certain position and, you know, maybe you're finding that it's not exactly what you were expecting, or you don't love it and you want to try to learn about other career paths. This is a great resource. You can look into jobs by industry or that match your degree. So there's various kind of categories that you can look into just to start exploring other career paths. And then we have pathways. And this is kind of like walks you through a topic to learn more about. It might have little quiz questions, but it is very like education based, sort of maybe like kind of like tutorials in a way, but just a place where you can learn various tips for something you might want to learn more about. And then we have our jobs feature. So this also functions similarly to other job boards where you can search for specific terms or use different preset filters. But these are really great to look into. They might be positions that Mudders have posted themselves, or you can see that maybe other alumni have worked at this place before. So just another additional place to be looking for opportunities. And then there are also groups that you can join on Mud Compass. You can go to all groups. So these are organized by industry or topic. So these, you might start kind of posting discussion questions, see if others have started talking about different topics in these groups. And finally, there's also resources. So we can look at things like for alumni specifically. And a lot of these are focused on like being a mentor. So little educational resources for mentors that you might be new to being a mentor. So kind of teaches you how to work with a mentee and what they might be looking for from you. All right, so that is Mud Compass. Now, one of the last resources that I want to show you is LinkedIn. And if you don't have a LinkedIn account, highly, 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 very strongly recommend making a LinkedIn account because there are so many great features that you can use. And I'll be showing you a couple now. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to start with is the Harvard College Alumni Association. Yes, this is the right one. So if you have not joined this group, I highly recommend that you do. Something really great that happens here is you get to learn about events like this one, and also learn about different opportunities that other Mudders might be promoting or that the companies that they work for are recruiting for. So it's really great. You can see just in a quick scroll that you know, this is about hiring, that previous one was about hiring, this one's about hiring. So there's a lot of kind of more internal opportunities that you can hear about through this group. And then another really great tool that LinkedIn has is if you look up Harvard Mudd College, the schools page, and let's say you want to, again, maybe you're looking at a certain company and you want to see if other Mudders have worked there, or maybe there's a certain job title that you're interested in pursuing and you want to see who might have that title, so you can try to reach out to them and ask them some questions. You can go to Harvard Mudd College's page and then go to the alumni tab here. And LinkedIn has several filters, like if you want to find people that are working at a certain company, or maybe you want to move to Washington or something and you want to find alumni around there. Maybe you want to find people that are doing research in Washington. And there's various other filters that you can use. And you can also search for specific terms. Like, again, if you want to find people that have a certain job title or are working for a certain company that doesn't kind of auto-populate here, you can search for those specific terms. And then you'll scroll down and be able to see the people that meet those criteria. This will be a mix of actual students and alumni, so you do have to just kind of make sure you're looking at it closely to see if they're actually alumni, not current students. And then if there's someone that is, you know, again, in a role or working in a company or at a school that you're interested in, you can just click on them. And then if you're not already connected, you can send a connection request. You do want to make sure that you're adding a note. And in this note, you're just briefly introducing yourself and essentially saying, you know, why you're reaching out. So if that's to ask them some questions about their experience at the company or in a certain grad program, or how they got to the certain role that they're in now. But you do only have 300 characters, so it is a pretty short message. So you do want to be very concise when you're reaching out this way. Yeah, this is just a great way also to, again, build your network, or if there's people that you, you know, former classmates that you just want to reconnect with, this is a great way that you can start rekindling those connections too. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to say a couple more things about LinkedIn. So one is that you can also search for jobs on LinkedIn. And you'll go to the jobs tab, and then you'll be able to search for specific terms or see some recommended positions. And also one more thing, with LinkedIn, it's really, really important that you have a pretty complete profile and that you're mentioning skills that are important for the industry that you're interested in or currently working in, because recruiters spend a lot of time on LinkedIn just searching for candidates, looking for specific skills that they're looking for. So you want to make sure that your profile is very complete and contains those important terms. And I'm not saying anything specific just because that, it's different for different industries. But making sure that you have those terms so that you can appear in those searches when recruiters are looking for candidates. And then one last thing on LinkedIn, I'll go back to the main page, and I'll just use Google again as an example. But let's say that maybe you find yourself in a position where you're interested in a company and you want to find a recruiter that works there or someone who might be working in a role that you're interested in. You can look up that company on LinkedIn. And then it looks very similar to the Harvard Med College page, but instead of alumni, you'll click on people. And this just means like employees of the company. And again, you can be searching for certain titles, like if we want to look for recruiters specifically, or again, you can use these various filters that they have. And then you'll be able to find those people that you're looking for. And then very similarly, you can try to connect with them, send them a message to get a conversation started with them. Okay. So that was kind of my section on several resources that are really helpful to use in your career development process. Now I want to talk about some specific topics relating to career development. So one very, very important topic when you're thinking about anything with careers is resumes. A resume is something that you're going to need for probably anything that you would want to apply to. And again, we have some examples in the career guide and little instructions that you can look at, but just some really quick, very general tips with resumes relating to format. So relating to how the information is organized and how it looks on the page. You're only, for the most part, when you're applying to industry jobs, you just want a one-page resume. That can change a little bit as you move further along in your career and kind of for managerial positions, a two-page resume might be more appropriate. But for the most part, one page is standard and good and safe to go with. And you want to aim for a size 10 to 12 font so that it's not too small. And if you need to squeeze in a little bit more content onto your page, you can make your margins as small as 1/2 inch all the way around the page, which gives you just a tiny bit more space to work with. You also want to make sure that you're using consistent format. So by that, I mean, if you're choosing to capitalize your section titles, making sure you're doing that consistently. If you're having your dates on the right-hand side, making sure they're all in that location. Or if you're using the word month, so like August versus the abbreviated AUG or the 08, any of those is fine. Just make sure that you're picking one and using it consistently throughout. You also want to make sure that you're organizing your resume for relevance to what you're applying to. And that's a really important topic or a kind of important statement. So that, because I get a lot of questions about I don't know, what I should include on my resume or what's important to include. It all depends on what you're applying to. So it may mean that you have slightly different resumes if you're applying to different types of opportunities, which is totally fine and honestly ideal to do, because you do want to be tailoring your resume and all your application materials, anything that you're using to apply to a specific opportunity, making sure that what you're sending in makes the most sense for that particular opportunity. And a little bit about describing your experiences on your resume. This is, in my opinion, like the most important part of your resume is these descriptions of what you did in your different experiences. So you want to make sure that you're bullet pointing those instead of, I sometimes see like people write in paragraphs a description of their experience. That's not really ideal to do that because when employers are looking through resumes and applications, they're kind of going through pretty quickly and skimming. So in paragraphs, information can very easily get lost in the middle or toward the end of the paragraph. Whereas if you use bullet points, that kind of helps guide the reader's attention and gives more weight to each thing that you list. And in those bullet points, you want to make sure that you're describing your accomplishments and not just like generally describing what your responsibilities were in the job. So you want to focus on like specifics that you did, like numbers, quantifying, if something that you did had some sort of important impact on your company or on the project that you were working on, definitely noting things like that. Just being specific and not just generally saying like what someone in this role usually would do. It's more about like what you specifically did and accomplished. Okay, so now another very short word about cover letters. Again, there are some example cover letters in the career guide and some general tips with cover letters. This also should just be one page and follows what we call like a business letter format, which is meaning that all of the text is left aligned. So there's no indents for paragraphs or anything. And there's just a blank line of space between each paragraph. Another very common question I get is, do I have to include a cover letter? If you have the option to, the answer is yes, you should definitely include a cover letter. It's just the opportunity to give a little bit more information about yourself, which is really only helpful in the job search process, especially if you don't really already know someone within the company. And it can also address like different things than what's on your resume, where your resume is, summary of your qualifications and past experiences. It's might not always address like why you're interested in a particular opportunity or field. So that's something that you can definitely address more thoroughly in a cover letter. And speaking of, the two main things that you want to address in a cover letter are why you're interested in what you're applying to, and also why you're qualified for what you're applying to. So interested and qualified, those are the two main things that you want to be addressing in your cover letter. And when you're addressing why you're qualified for a particular position, how that's like different than what's on your resume is another question that I get. So where your resume is kind of like a list of I did this, 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 the cover letter can share like one or two specific examples from your past experiences that really illustrate whatever skills and qualifications you're claiming to have. So again, it can go into a bit more like context around a particular example. It can tell a little bit of like a story, a little anecdote. So it can come off as pretty different, or it should come off as pretty different from your resume, because the cover letter can also, if it's appropriate for what you're applying to, it can have like even a slightly more informal tone or kind of sound like a more personal like voice that, depending on the company, can be appropriate to do. Oh, and then also something else that's really great to address in cover letters that can sometimes be a little more challenging to address in a resume is those softer skills. So things like leadership, organization, collaboration, initiative, these kinds of things that are a little less tangible, I guess, can be easier to address in a cover letter, where again, you can share a little story of a time that illustrates that skill. Okay, so now on to behavioral interviewing, another totally distinct topic. We have a presentation recording that's on YouTube that you can just follow this link, and I'll be sure to share these slides with Vanessa so she can distribute them, so you'll have all these links as well. But this presentation just details things to do before, during, and after a behavioral interview, and also talks about some strategies for answering common questions. And some really general tips about behavioral interviewing. you can almost always count on being asked, tell me about yourself and why you're interested in this position in a behavioral interview. So it's really, really important to make sure that you have responses for these kinds of questions prepared and just ready to go. And we can, if you have questions about more specifics around that, I'm totally happy to talk about that. And then there's a very useful strategy or framework for answering general behavioral questions. And kind of traditional behavioral questions are the ones that are like, tell me about a time when you solved a difficult problem, or tell me about a time that you had a disagreement with a supervisor. So those kind of like, tell me about a time when type of questions that are asking you to recall previous experiences. A really strong framework for answering those questions is called the CARL method. And CARL stands for context, action, results, and learning. So when you're talking about a previous experience, you want to make sure you're giving your interviewer enough context to kind of like understand the situation, what was happening. Action is what you did in that situation. Results is, of course, what happened because of the actions that you took. And then a really nice way to wrap up these responses is with what you learned from the situation that you're taking forward with you into future situations and future experiences. You know, whether that was good or bad, it's still valuable, you know, that you learned something. And even having a bad experience, you know, you learned not to do those things in the future. And then really, really important that after any interview, you send some sort of thank you. So it could be a mailed note. It totally doesn't have to be. It can definitely just be an email, but something expressing, you know, your gratitude for the opportunity to interview for that opportunity, as well as letting them know whether or not you're still interested in the position. It is totally valid and definitely happens that you may go through an interview process and like maybe it was something you were initially really excited for, but then through the interview process, you like met people and like maybe you weren't really vibing with them or something weird happened that made you kind of change your opinion on how interested you are in the opportunity. That is totally, totally fine and honestly like very valuable to learn. So in that follow-up or in that thank you after an interview, you also just want to state whether or not you're still interested in the position. Okay, and now kind of my last main topic, I wanted to, again, just very, very briefly and lightly touch on the topic of negotiation. So we also have resources for this in the career guide, so you can refer to those, but some very general tips for negotiation. Your strongest tools to negotiate are market research. So finding what, and this is kind of mostly in reference to salary, but finding what the average salary is for the type of role that you're being offered for whatever size of company it is in whatever geographic area, however many years of experience that you have. So finding out the market average. So that's a really powerful tool that you have. And then another really powerful tool is your unique qualifications. So what you specifically are offering the company. So this can come from maybe in your interview, you proposed a specific solution or talked about a very relevant experience that you had, or maybe you talk about like your MUD education, this kind of broad liberal arts STEM education, and how that helps you address problems and think through problems in different ways. So whatever it is, you're just wanting to remember kind of market research and your unique qualifications. Those are your strongest negotiation tools. And doing this market and salary research, a really great tool to do this is Glassdoor. If you haven't used Glassdoor, I highly recommend that you look through it. It has really, really great information on salary, as well as resources for preparing for interviews. So people can leave reviews of companies. They can share how their interview experience went. They might, again, also like on Handshake, share interview questions that they were asked for specific positions. So it's a really, really great tool to help you prepare for interviews and salary stuff. And also beyond salary, there are other benefits and parts of your compensation package that you can try to negotiate. So this might be around like a starting or signing bonus, funding for relocation if you need to move to work for them. You might also ask about flexible hours, so working, kind of outside of the usual 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., as well as having the flexibility to work remotely sometimes, and maybe even like funding for professional development. Funding and time off for professional development might be something that you're interested in. So any of these things you can ask if they are negotiable, if you want to try to get more out of your offer. All right, so really quick, some announcements about upcoming events that we have. We are hosting a virtual kind of broad STEM career fair in early February. So if any companies that you might be working for are interested and want to recruit mudders, that's happening in early February, and we'll be sending out more information and registration information closer to that date. And then I mentioned really briefly before, we're hosting a few different on-campus industry nights. So again, if your companies or anyone you know, any companies you know, are within these industries and want to recruit mudders, these are happening on these specific dates listed, and more information will come out about these as well. And then a final thing that I wanted to say is that if you want to make an individual appointment on Handshake with myself or other advisor, if you're looking at Handshake and you're seeing the appointment times that are available and none of them work for you, or you want to meet sooner than the times listed, you can always just email me, and more likely than not, we'll be able to find a time that we're available outside of the times that are available on Handshake. So that's all that I had for right now. Are there any questions? And I see there is something in the chat.
So we do have a question from the chat. Should we include the company's address even if we are sending the cover letter electronically?
Great question. So you definitely don't have to include the company address or company name and address. That's kind of one of those things that I call it like a vestigial organ that's sort of just left because it was something that was important to do before, but is not anymore, but just kind of has hung around. So it's not absolutely necessary, but also doesn't hurt at all to include it.
Great, thank you. Everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit in the Q&A box. I do have a few pre-submitted questions that I'm going to go through, Natasha. They're mainly tailored towards resume and CVs and cover letters. First question, another question, someone would like to know how we could tailor a resume and CV to specific jobs we're applying. Do you have any tips for that?
Yes, so that's highly dependent, again, on what you're applying to. So I recommend trying to use the job description as sort of your guiding map of what's important to include on a resume or a CV or any application materials. And I feel like, I mean, if the company doesn't have a super detailed job description, that's a little harder, but oftentimes I feel like if you really read through it, you can kind of tell what they're valuing and what they're emphasizing.
Great, thank you. And then a question about cover letters. The person keeps getting different advice about the cover letter. Should the cover letter be more focused on explaining the experiences or sharing who they are, or is it something else entirely, or a mix of it?
Yeah, definitely both. Or I mean, both the first topics that were mentioned. So yeah, you do want to, you can speak about yourself personally. That might be a piece of that why you're interested in the opportunity. Like maybe the company has certain values that really resonate with you or are, really important to you. So that might be, a space for you to talk about yourself and make that personal connection with the company. So that's really great to do. And then you do definitely want to talk about your experiences as well that make you qualified.
Great, thank you. So networking can be pretty difficult. Do you have any advice or tips on what are best ways to network with people, whether in person or virtual?
Yeah, so virtually specifically, I would highly recommend kind of going through LinkedIn and using some of the alumni finding things or finding employees at different companies you might be interested in. And if you're not really sure what to say right away, I kind of like easiest thing I would recommend is just sending that message and introducing yourself and, saying that you might be interested in learning more about their company or about their role, and just asking if they have some time to answer some of your questions. And that's just kind of, you send that off, wait to hear back. And then there are a lot of different resources online too. If you just look up like questions to ask during informational interviews or something, because that's a term for it, is when you try to reach out to a professional that you want to ask some questions of, that's something that it might be called, in addition to just generally networking. And then in person, honestly, kind of similar. Like I find at least, when you lead with questions and just wanting to learn a little bit more about the person that you're trying to talk to or about their work or company or something, that can sort of be easier and lead to like more natural conversation. So yeah, if you are someone who kind of, it's maybe harder for you to think of questions on the spot, to just kind of have a short list of good discussion questions that you can just pull out whenever this situation arises.
Great, thank you. So I've heard firm handshakes is a thing when meeting in person, but with COVID and everything, like what's the best way at this point in time?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a great recommendation for that. I feel like I kind of respond to what the other person does. Like if they go for a handshake, I'll kind of go for it. But I've also seen people that just kind of like stick out their elbow to like bump elbows or, don't touch at all. So yeah, if you're not comfortable with handshakes or with too much contact, you might want to like be the one to initiate the elbow so that they know not to go in for a handshake. But it's in my experience, it's varied a lot what people are comfortable with.
Great, thank you. What are ways to overcome imposter syndrome?
Yeah, this is a big one, I would say, and very like individual. I would say personally, something that I've found helpful is to talk to someone who, knows me well and kind of share if I'm feeling certain worries or something. And then like asking them like, is this really something I should be worrying about? Or like, do you feel like I'm, this is too much or like is not realistic? And then just hearing from someone else that if I'm maybe like, have an unrealistic perception of myself, just hearing that kind of helps me readjust sort of my perception. So that's something that I do personally, but I know that there are many other things too that might help. But I think that surrounding yourself with people that know you realistically and can kind of be a more friendly and nicer mirror than you might be to yourself is really helpful.
Great, thank you. So back to LinkedIn, do you have any tips for like updating our profile, like your headline, like what should that look like?
Yeah, so it can be a variety of things. I think the standard thing is like it says your job title at whatever company you're working at, or like student at school or something. I personally think that's fine to have. I know that other people that honestly probably have a lot more experience with LinkedIn than I do will recommend that you try to include like some of your key skills in your headline. There are benefits, I think, to anything that you would include. If you are like really wanting to know more about LinkedIn, I would definitely recommend making an appointment so we can talk more in depth about your kind of personal situation, what you're looking for.
Great, thank you. So, this month being Career Development Month, how and when should I talk to my supervisor about my career trajectory?
Whenever that thought comes into your head that you kind of want to talk about maybe like what your next steps might be, or like new skills or like new ways you want to grow. I would say like whenever you have that thought or desire could be a good time. I mean, well, okay, logistically, probably not at a time that they're super busy or something, or a very busy season. But yeah, I've heard that, and it also kind of depends on like the relationship you have with your supervisor too. Like if it's kind of more friendly and like close, then, just could be asking to have that conversation in person, or if maybe you're a little more distant from your supervisor, I've heard people recommend like emailing them to ask about if you can discuss like your future with the company or something like that. They're kind of like phrases like that that can kind of clue them in on what you want to talk about. Yeah, a really highly dependent, a lot of different ways to go about it.
Right. Thank you. I mean, from my experience, I think another good time to talk about your career trajectory is after like a review, right? Like since you do get that about every 6 months or every year, depending on your company. So another good time to talk about your career trajectory then.
Yes, definitely.
So we are coming up on the hour. So I have one last question for you. Also, if you have other questions you want us to ask, please feel free to let us know. What does a career action plan look like?
Sure. This I'm not really familiar with the phrase specifically, or if it means something specific, but kind of my assumptions is that it's just generally goal setting. I think that it can be helpful if you have like a long-term goal, like, eventually like later in your career, you want to be at this certain level or have this certain job title. And then just kind of working backwards from that. And I think it's really, really helpful to give yourself, and this might be part of like the action plan idea, like an actual timeline too. So setting dates, or like roughly in like 1 year, I kind of want to be here, or I want to have done these things or had these certain experiences. So yeah, I apologize if that's something specific that I'm just not familiar with. But it's also totally something we can talk about in an appointment too. If you kind of have that longer term goal and you're not really sure like kind of what you should be doing between now and then, we can definitely talk about that.
Great, thank you. And I believe that's what that term means. I've heard that from that before. Well, Natasha, I want to thank you for joining us today and for sharing your knowledge and insights with us. Thank you to our audience for your questions and for attending this event. We will follow up within the next week with a recorded video and any presentation materials, as well as any links that we mentioned. There will be more Golden Knowledge workshops, webinars coming up in 2023, so stay tuned. If there are specific topics you're interested in learning about, whether that's financial literacy, career development, life skills, health and wellness, whatever that may be, let us know. Please contact us at gold@hmc.edu. All future events can be found on our website at alumni.hmc.edu. Have a great night, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Have a good night.